Yeah.
So, hello and welcome everybody to the Chakra Meditation Podcast. And today I'm so excited because I have this wonderful woman with me, Clarissa Kritsjansson, who is a holistic menopause educator, expert, coach. And this is a subject that I've been wanting to delve into for a long while now. And I think it's one that's really important. You know, if you're pre-perimenopause, if you're perimenopause or menopause, if you're a man with a partner, you need to know all of this as well. So first of all, welcome, Clarissa. How are you?
I'm great, Roseanne. Thank you so much for connecting and inviting me to come on this beautiful podcast.
Thank
Really
you.
excited.
So, gosh, I mean, where to start? I mean, I have normally when I have a podcast, I research and I think, I write down a whole lot of questions. But today I woke up this morning going, oh, I'm talking to Clarissa today. I can't wait. I've got so many questions. And now I'm here. I'm not entirely sure where to start. But I think what I want to get at, let's sort of get to where my big question is, I think, and then we'll work around it, swirl around it and get back to it. So my big question is, obviously I work, with chakras, energy work, and I want to understand how menopause affects us energetically. We all know the symptoms. Well, we don't maybe all know the symptoms. So I would love to, let's start there. Let's find out like what is actually going on. Just a brief précis for those people who have not a clue, what the symptoms are, what sort of happens, and then we'll go from there.
That's a really good place to start because there are a myriad of symptoms, which, each is your unique cocktail, if we like, which sounds horrible, doesn't it? But that's the reality. It's a bit sort of like, and of course it's shifting and moving because this whole transition can go from anything between 2 years, unfortunately up to 15 for some people.
Yeah.
And carry on, because even after your periods of stop, there's still stuff that can be going on. But really, we used to talk about it being hot flashes and weight gain. And of course, that's true, but it's not really what's impacting the quality of your life. And that's what I tend to come from. What's really hurting us from a quality of life perspective? And that's our mental health. And I think we're now, thank goodness, in the middle of World Menopause Month, which is started on Monday. October is now designated that. So what an opportune time to have this conversation.
Absolutely.
Then it is brain fog, mood swings, anxiety, and those things really rock us. And then if we can't sleep, then that's the things that are saying to women, the quality of my life feels like hell. I've suddenly slept 2 hours a night for 4 years. I hear that so often.
Yeah.
And I have panic attacks and weird stuff happens. Suddenly I'm really hypersensitive to stuff and I get rosacea, I get tinnitus, I've got gut issues. So much is impacting on us. And of course, stress just compounds that. So if we come into this time of life with a low bandwidth and you get lots of changes going on hormonally, which are really affecting your brain a long time before they're affecting your body. And we don't realize that we can be brain-wise 5 years before our body starts going, oh, this is showing up. And then we can be, maybe we don't have challenging. And there are people who have no challenging symptoms at all, breeze through it. And I'm always really interested in them. I've talked to a lot of naturopaths and we go, well, what is it about them?
Yeah.
And then there's this 20% who have the most horrific time, but then look at their past trauma, look at their lifestyle, look at the stress that's in their life now, because those will also be key. So it's not just my hormones are going up and down and declining. It's also what's wrapped around it, in both from inside ourselves, how we see ourselves, and things that come from the outside world, toxins. All of these factors will impact our hormonal health and well-being. So the symptoms are a signal that something isn't right, that something's changing, and we should be paying attention to them.
Yeah, and that's why that makes perfect sense, that you have to look at this holistically, and just looking at the symptoms. And I know that, when I started to feel like, oh, here we go, is the I'm going to start looking up a few symptoms. You look up and there's a list of like 34 different things that could be put down to perimenopause or menopause. And as you say, you can have a cocktail, a combination, and a uniqueness, but you're absolutely right. The compounding factors are your existing lifestyle, your existing nutrition, stress, relationships, all of that kind of thing can really just pile up one on top of the other. And the other thing that I think is desperately unfair about this for women is that at this time of life, so let's say for the sake of argument, 50, ish,
yeah,
you're likely to have children who are just sort of leaving home, starting their new life, need support. Plus, you're likely to have parents who are getting to the point where they may need support.
yeah.
And there you are, stuck in the middle of this generational pull, whilst your brain feels like it's literally melting out of your ears.
Exactly. And I think what maybe you said 50, but I'd actually say more commonly now it's mid-40s. And sometimes you've got a toddler.
What?
Yeah. You could have small children. I have plenty of
yes,
friends.
sorry.
If you're like 43 or something,
yes, you could have
this
young
kicks
children,
off, because this is really when it can be quite intense for women. They're like 43, 44, and they've got small children. I've had friends who've had a baby at this time. So
yes,
it's just tremendous. And I think when we are 50 plus, yes, we have all the empty nesting. We've got our parents to care for. We're in the middle of really busy careers and all the stuff that goes on around that. And so we're like, energetically, we're very strung out at this time.
Yeah. The other thing that always comes up there's something that comes up for me, and it was interesting. I had a yoga day the other weekend, and at the end we all sit down and have a cup of tea and cake at the end. It was lovely. And so I think there were 5 of us left sitting around having a cup of tea, and somebody started, mentioned that they were, their menopause, how it was affecting them. And we started talking about it, and someone said, yes, because of course in our Mother's Day, menopause was called the change. And I was like, sort of had this moment where I realized like this change. So not only do you have this sort of hormonal thing, but for me, certainly, one of the things that has been really big in my shift has been my relationship, my marriage. Like, I suddenly feel like I have 0 patience. Like someone removed my tolerance chip for any of the BS in my life.
That's about right. Yeah. Somebody, a wonderful yoga teacher who you may know, she's a yoga nidra, like world-renowned, Karen Brody. She said, if you're not being disagreeable in menopause, you're really not changing into becoming a wiser, older crone. And I think we are.
Exactly.
We can just have a lot less tolerance. The sort of those parts of our brains where we've been all nurturing, carey, are just kind of chopped off, and we don't have that need anymore, because we're not going to be having any more children and we're grandmothering, but that's a different thing. But we don't tolerate any BS whatsoever.
Yeah, it's like that time of your life where you were the mother, where you're like, what can I do for you? How can I help? How can I smooth everything over? How can I be, of most assistance for everybody? Suddenly there's like this shift where you go, actually, I don't need to be a mother anymore. The mothering instinct has flown along with the kids, potentially. And, I don't necessarily, hate to say it, but actually need a man in my life. So if you happily, my husband never listens to my podcast, so I can say this. But if you are in that, you don't want to be mothering anybody anymore. You want to, like, you've got the rest of your life. This is how I feel. I'm just like, right now I've got my purpose. I want to just like push on and make a difference and do what I want to do. I don't want to be making lunch or washing socks for
No,
No.
we're done with that.
Yeah.
We're absolutely done with it. And there's this sense that now it's my time and I want to step out and go in the world. And that is, again, a shift in our energy systems, and a new sense of needing to honor boundaries that have been possibly a little porous in previous years. And that's understandable. These are phases. We shouldn't regret that we've been carrying and nurturing at the times when we did. That's about letting that go and saying that phase is done. Now there's a different phase for me, because in many ways the universal energy is calling me to do something else in this world, to change things in my local community, maybe step out on bigger platforms. And we are seeing women all around the world at 50 plus stepping up to something so different than maybe previous generation cities in a smaller scale. But we're stepping out, building businesses, starting podcasts, writing books, changing and championing important things, and we're a force to be reckoned with.
Absolutely, you're so right, Clarissa. This is the positive side of menopause. And I think that one of the things that in the public, it's like, oh, you've got all your hot flashes and all the symptoms that people suffer with. And I'm not denying that they do suffer, and the mood swings and the all of the various things that come about are tough to deal with. But that's, I think, if we can educate ourselves so we can catch ourselves and go, okay, so especially with moods, because you tend to believe your own emotions, don't you? Believe your thoughts. But if you can then go, just ask yourself, is that perhaps a hormone? Is that perhaps a menopause symptom? Then, you're going to be putting yourself back into a sort of a saner mindset, if you like.
Well, exactly. Not allowing, and I think dialing back on the negative conversation is very important. I mean, we're hardwired to that. We can't help it. That's the way our beautiful brains are constructed, but it's not actually helpful. And we have to also question why people want to champion that in the wider world, because there's often a vested financial interest in them in doing that. And we know that we don't have to, and not every single woman agrees with this terribly negative conversation at all. If we even look at social media, which I have, menopause is my hashtag thing, so I get more of it than probably most people do. But when I actually look at that, I know that there's millions of women around the world who push back against an extremely negative dialogue and say, well, that's actually not my experience. There have been amazing things that have happened because of this life transition, even though bits of it were hard. So we're not denying that some of it's challenging, but we're not seeing it as either the end, or we're not actually being locked in, as you said, and allowing every thought and every mood in our heads to be the truth, because sometimes it's our own mind just talking. We're listening with this rather than with our heart.
Yeah. And so, I mean, the big thing around menopause obviously is HRT and hormone replacement therapy, which is touted as a miracle. And you hear lots of people saying it's just saved my life. I feel normal again. What's your take on HRT? How do you see it? And let's just go there first of all.
Let's go there first. Well, firstly, there's no medication that's a panacea for anything. Doesn't matter what your condition is. No medication is without side effects and can fix you. And HRT has a role to play. I mean, if you are really, really struggling, and particularly with very significant mental health issues, possibly your hot flashes are to the point where you're literally drenched in sweat the whole time and you can't sleep, you have particular other issues, then of course you have to seek medical intervention. We would in any condition do that. But actually, if you listen to the more saner advice that's out there, that's coming out much more even from the menopause societies in America, in Britain, and in Sweden too, is that there's a much smaller percentage of women who actually must be on this medication. And the recommendations are that women should be on it for the shortest time possible at the lowest dose possible. That's woven through all of this. And there are, you know, and we have to be careful, because obviously on the one hand, conventional medicine takes a long time to change its views. But what we are seeing is on the functional medicine side, there's this much more interesting weaving of some hormone therapy, but also with lifestyle and functional medicine, with herbs, with yoga, with mindfulness, with these things. And you're creating a more all-round holistic approach, and HRT kind of sits with that, but it's not the only way forward.
And I think it is touted as such. You know, I think it is put out there. You know, I know because recently I went to my GP and I said, I'm having XYZ symptoms, and, you know, could this be? And, you know, I'm nearly 53. So she was like, well, yes, obviously. And she was like, well, you know, what symptoms have you got? And so I listed a few, and none of, you know, I'm not getting hot flashes. I'm not, you know, I'm a bit of a moody old cow. That's about all. And, you know, various aches and pains, but who doesn't have aches and pains, you know, just come and go. And she was like, okay, well, that's fine. We'll get you some, you know, some HRT, you know. And it was so simple, so easy for me to get the estrogen gel. And that's why I'm so excited and pleased to talk to you, because I kind of feel like I don't have enough information to know exactly what it is I'm doing to myself when I add estrogen, you know, put it onto my skin and take it on board.
It's very true. I mean, you are stabilizing your hormones. You're not reversing menopause, which is what some funny people go around touting as well. I don't know why we want to do that. But
why would you want to do that?
Well, we didn't know. You know, but what we are doing is that we are stabilizing our hormonal decline, so it's not as jagged, I would say.
Right.
And of course, we need to recognize that there are side effects to this. And I'm not talking about the big drama ones that we've heard, but women sometimes say, well, it worked, it got rid of X, but I put on weight, or my moods were affected. So I interviewed on my podcast Marion Stewart, who is probably the doyenne, if we like, of natural menopause. She really is. I mean, she's written 28 books and, you know, launched an amazing program. She's an amazing woman. She was working on this 30 years ago. And, you know, she said, well, you know, in her surveys, 61% of women, when they were on it, said, this is impacting me negatively. I'd actually quite like to get off. Really? And so a lot of women, and I've seen that in Facebook groups in Sweden too, people going, well, actually, I'd like to come off this now. It's kind of, I've had enough of it. It's kind of did what it did, but there were downsides too. Yeah. So I think that's what we need to balance. I mean, some people clearly don't change their diet or their lifestyle, and maybe then it makes a huge difference. But if we embrace things holistically, we'll be amazed how much our diet, our exercise, dealing with feelings, if we like, and taking the yogic, Ayurvedic, TCM type routes, which actually have always stated that women need to slow down, be calmer and more nurturing of themselves at this time, we would be surprised how much better we would feel.
Yeah. So really, we can look at this in terms of if we are consciously, mindfully aware of what our body's needs are, we can actually fulfill them and just do this naturally, do our menopause naturally. There seems to be this kind of sensationalism around, you know, everybody needs some kind of hormonal replacement in order to survive it. But then but what's I've always struggled with, and this may be a really dumb question, but I'll put it out there, but like at some point you're going to come off those, and then surely you're just kind of delaying the inevitable. Are you not going to have all the same symptoms and things as you come off that estrogen or progesterone?
Of course you are. You're going to have to come off it very slowly, which is what's been scary in the UK with the shortages.
Yeah.
Because women have suddenly found themselves in a gap.
Yeah.
And panicked, because of course you will. I mean, obviously over time, you would want to reduce down slowly and come off it. And I mean, the advice from all the medical practitioners is that you should come off it around about 60, and they won't put people on who are over 60. So there's a few doctors going menopause, HRT for life, but that isn't actually the official view. The official view is that this is something that you should be coming off slowly as you approach 60. There's certainly a lot of testing if you've been on it for more than 5 years to ensure that it's not creating situations for cancer. So there is a lot of checking to make sure you're still okay, and the risk for thrombosis remains low and all the rest. So it's not cut and dried, let's put it like that, Rosa.
No, it's not. So I mean, I suppose the obvious ideal for every woman to go through is a natural menopause, where they just gently they have a few mild symptoms, they feel different, and then they come out the other side, they're fine. So how can we help that along? I mean, obviously you've talked to quite a few of these things, exercise, nutrition, mindfulness, meditation, all the things that you and I do, because you are you are a Qigong specialist as well.
Yeah.
And that obviously deals with mind, body, spirit, exercise, breathing, meditation of sorts. So just talk to me a little bit about how these beautiful practices, which are so holistic and so natural and so ancient as well, those ancient people, they knew a thing or two, how they actually really do support us as we go through menopause.
Well, I mean, systems like Qigong, which, I mean, there's a lot of parallels to Ayurvedic yogic systems too, are all about supporting the energy balance in the body. And they're in menopause, the Qigong system can really support vital organs. The liver is such a critical organ. And obviously we have 5 key organs in Qigong that we're supporting, which is the liver, the kidneys, the spleen, the heart, and the lungs. And we think about the liver, all our hormones are processed in there. So we want liver energy to be strong. We want kidneys that are our life force. And if you think, that's where your adrenal glands are sitting too. So, and they take over the function of producing estrogen and progesterone and testosterone as our ovaries give up their job. So having good kidney energy has huge additional benefit. It's one of the key energies, and women are often very weak in kidney energy. So building up your
how do we bolster those energies?
Well, in the Qigong, we do a lot of the Qigong practices are actually focused on particular areas of the body. So I teach a system called Share Be Share, which is a Tai Chi Qigong system. It's a medical Qigong system.
Right.
So if people may be familiar, they see people practice that. Often the Bao Dun Jin, which is the silk brocade, which is a really calming, soothing, grounding. But in the Share Be Share, we're working on particular organs and meridians of the body. We're actually act in each of the stances we make. Sometimes we make a whole flow dynamic sequence. Sometimes we hold particular postures that work with different elements and different types of organs and emotions. So that's what we're working with. So if you could do one stance, because they're often in little parts, and do them on one side and the other side of the body, and that's 40 minutes. If you did it, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, if you have the patience. Not many Western people have the patience, but that's no different to yin yoga, where you hold the stance for it, or hatha yoga, where you're holding a lot of the stances rather than the dynamic flowing. Both have their ways, but we're working particularly, and I work a lot, for example, with spleen energy, because the spleen is to do with mental clarity. So if you're brain foggy, I have a number of particular Qigong postures, if we like, or movements, if you like, that work with helping keep unclear blockages in your spleen energy that help mental clarity. So that's how I work with my Qigong. And I teach routines around insomnia, emotional balance, mental clarity. We do a lot of work on strengthening bones, lowering blood pressure. They're sort of more towards our longevity. And so there are particular movements we can do, and there are some people who teach, for example, Qigong for libido reinforcement. I don't at the moment, but there are systems and approaches to doing that as well.
And then in the same way that, you know, we can create a yoga sequence that will speak to all of those organs, speak to those energies as well. It's that connecting with the energy that we need. And it's really interesting that you talk about the liver and the spleen and the kidneys, because I think that again, that's just something that's not in the mainstream conversation. It's like, if people knew that they needed to be thinking about, not necessarily even doing, just like, let's just get a dot of awareness there of their livers, their kidney health, you know, that would engender a whole lot more investigation into how much, you know, hydration we're taking on, what we're eating, all of those sort of things. I think
and TCM has food systems that looks at the sort of foods you can use to support your organs, support the chi, how that shifts and changes with the seasons. And there's also a whole clock, 24-hour clock, which looks at each sort of 2 hours divided up, that different organs can be nurtured through that way, and how patterns of behavior and routines can be built around that clock that are really supportive to your overall energy.
Wow, that sounds super valuable. So where would somebody find that? If somebody wanted to look that up, how would they find that? What would they
probably just be able to put up a TCM clock. You could traditional Chinese medicine clock or wheel, and it will come up. There are lots, and they all look quite similar. Some are more complicated than other, because some you want to stick on all the elements from the 5, you know, I mean, Chinese medicine is endless, just like Ayurveda is, you know, it's complicated.
Because this is what this is going to be my next question. So similarly, like in Ayurvedic medicine, where, you know, diet is the medicine essentially, you know, you have the 3 different types, you know, the Pitta, Kapha, and Vata. Is that right? Anyway,
yes, that's right. Yes.
Types of which we are all, you know, you want to have a balance between 3. We tend to lean towards one type on the whole. So, you know, you could go to an Ayurvedic doctor and they go, yes, you're a Pitta type, so this is the kind of diet that you need to bring yourself more back into balance. So on that basis, is it possible to, in this traditional Chinese medicine way, to go, right, for menopause, for your kidney health, you need to be eating more ABC? Like,
well, definitely you can definitely eat for the different energies and for the different energies of the organs. So yes, there is that. My acupuncturist, because acupuncture is one of the pillars of TCM, the other being medical Qigong, also Tuin arm massage.
Right.
So that there are some different branches to TCM, and Chinese herbs, and people specialize in each of those. Not everyone is specialized in all of those.
No, that would be a lot.
So a bit like any other system. We're in our systems in the part of the TCM that we know, as opposed to being. So I'm not an acupuncturist, and I have absolutely no desire to stick anything in
needles.
No, it's not my thing. But I go to an acupuncturist.
Yes. Yeah, because it is very it's very powerful. You literally tap into the meridians, or nadis, as a yogi would call them. Absolutely. Same thing, different name. So if we wanted to say, let's use an example of supporting the liver, what would you, if I just, you know, we're just chatting, I want you to just give me how do I support my liver? What's the, apart in terms of dietary,
In terms of diet, it's again the time of day you eat to support your diet. So we don't want to be loading up on lots of fatty foods. We want to be eating supportive foods, like sometimes warm foods. We might be looking at not eating damp foods. Actually, that's also very important for the kid, not to eat food that's damp. So strange foods like pumpkin can be very damp food, and you don't think that's damp, but it's different types of foods can be hot or cold. You might want to have certain types of spice, so some food that's sort of warming and spicy, but that then depends on whether it's warm or cold outside as well.
Yes, exactly. And I know that I've got listeners in America who will be sweltering right now in Florida or wherever, and they're going, "No, I don't need to eat pumpkin."
No. And you might need to feel your. I mean, each person, if they come to you as a face-to-face patient, goodness knows not many people do these days, but we do feel their pulse. We do take a pulse, not quite in the European way. You're not feeling the heart pulse, but you're feeling the energy pulse. And then you might be able to feel where the blockage really is. So it tends to be a combination of particular movements. You might set up a movement sequence for that person, some food for that person that would work for them where they are. And then you might also suggest some meditations that work, because that's the other part. That's another part of my work, is I teach meditation as well.
Okay, so I'm going to be really annoying, Clarissa, and I'm going to say somebody's listening to this going, "Oh, this is really interesting," and I get it, but I am freaking out. My brain does not work anymore. I don't have time. I've got kids, I've got career, I've got, to look after the house, go shopping. I've got bigger things to worry about, electricity bills, all of that kind of stuff is going on. I don't have time to sit down and take my pulse and listen to, and do, so like in terms of like people who are suffering big time with hot flashes, with brain fog, with pain, because just random pain is something that is a big debilitator of menopause and perimenopause. Like how are we going to help? What I want to do is sort of offer some kind of sort of ray of hope or light or help for somebody who is just snowed in with all of this stuff and just goes, energetically, I'm done, and I'm exhausted, and I'm at the end of my tether. Just pass me the estrogen gel and let me get on with my life.
Yes. What I sometimes say to people who come to me, and I have lots of frazzled people like that, is let's look at where your energy's flowing. Let's just sit down and just practically, don't worry about any treatments or anything like that at this moment. Let's just write down all the things that we do in the day, and let's just have a look at which are energy depleting and which are energy giving. Which could you give away to somebody else to do for you? Which could you actually say, why am I doing this? Not even give them away, just, is this really what I want? And then you end up with a list of drainers and sustainers. And if you can minimize those drainers by whatever method, and that sometimes means saying the words to somebody around you, whether that's a colleague, a friend, a partner, a child, I need your help. I need your support. Because we feel like screeching, but screeching never cuts through. But using communicative language like I need your support, people go, oh, I kind of understand that intuitively. And we get the support. And then we look at the things that are sustaining and say, which of these could I maybe bring a bit more into my life? And then we look at how we behave. Well, before we even go to any treatment, we're kind of then building up our sustainers and asking questions. Are there some things missing off this list that I loved to do, but I can't do now? How could I bring them in a different form? If you love entertaining, but you haven't got the energy, could you make Friday night pizza night with your family or something like that, so that we're building up our positive energy. We're letting go of our drainers. And pace, if you can only do something for a shorter period of time, then do that. I often work with a system called 4Ps, which comes from pain management, where we start to be more present, as I've said, of where our energy is going. Start prioritizing and then planning where our energy is going and what we're going to do, and then pace and do less and do it in smaller bites. If it's exhausting, we don't have to punish ourselves in the gym for 40 minutes and do, let's say I can do 10 minutes and then I can come in maybe with some qigong and I say, if you could do this for 10 minutes every morning, 10 minutes, we've got 10 minutes.
Yeah, we've all got 10.
You would feel we've got 10 minutes. You would feel the benefit. Yeah. And maybe when you can work 10 minutes, you can consider 20. And I often teach a 20-minute morning routine, which is a full body system routine, touches every organ and it balances us. 20 minutes, if we can do that several times a week, the shift in our energy would be enormous.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is what comes to my mind when you say, you don't have to go to the gym and punish yourself for 40 minutes. Some people find that really cathartic and they need to just get a sweat on. They just need to kind of like run those adrenaline, that cortisol out of their body. Yeah. But then again, if you've got 40 minutes to do a routine like that, which may support you mentally, but may exhaust you physically, then swapping it out for something like yoga or qigong, which is going to not drain you. Well, mind you, some yoga classes can be exhausting, so it's finding the right yoga class, isn't it? Come to my yoga class. Go to Clarissa's qigong. Finding a balance that's a form of exercise that is going to make your body feel like it's done something, but also sustain you emotionally, so energetically. That's definitely a benefit. That's gonna be worth finding.
And a walk in nature, a sit down, those sorts of things are very supportive. And I think sometimes we see people telling people to practice meditation, and these things are all great, but we have to get ourselves there. We have to come stepwise if we're very frazzled, and gradually create space. And of course, as the menopause goes on and our families go away, we create more gaps in our lives and more of this can come into our life. But when we're in the throes of it, we do what we can. Small bits, small bites work really, really well.
Yeah. No, I think that's really, it's very encouraging to hear. It's lovely to hear the positive side, the fact that we can cope with menopause. Like, come on, we're women, we cope with everything. We can cope with menopause.
We can.
We cope. We can. This is just another thing that we have to get through. We deal with it, but there is this beautiful strength that comes alongside it, which I am really personally enjoying, where I'm just like actually becoming a little bit more selfish. It's like, no, I'm going to go and do what I want to do because I don't need to be looking at, you're a grown-ass man, you can sort yourself out. I don't need to be mothering, but that's just my personal issue. It's a bit of a people pleaser. So, breaking out of that has actually been really, really liberating. And thinking, this is a phase where I'm going through, and we all go through it, and to one degree or the other, we all suffer a little bit. There's a kind of, I don't know, it's interesting because I talked to my sister who's 5 years older than me, and she's had a rough menopause. It was tough for her, and she is always saying, there's a kind of a grief that goes alongside menopause as well, which is energetically a heavy thing to hang on to.
Yes, it is. And I think we're grieving lots of things at this stage, Roseanne. We're not just grieving the loss of our fertility. We're grieving maybe the loss of a way of living that is over. We can be grieving the loss of our youth and the way we don't look the same, and we will never look the same. And sometimes that's just the way, because I look at myself and I don't look the same. And so it's fine. We're changing, and transitions can bring up strong emotions like grief, and we have to just meet that with immense kindness, like we would a friend who was grieving, sometimes it's good to have a sad day, let it all out, write it out, cry it out, listen to sad music, whatever, but know that does pass.
Yeah. No, I think it can be incredibly liberating, hugely liberating. And I think it's really liberating listening to you talk about it in terms of, we can totally cope with this. We don't have to resort to artificial hormones. We don't have to, succumb to the medical, if you need that support for a bit, fine, because we know if it's there to help if we need it. Yes. But we don't have to. And that's something that I think is a really positive message that that is, in all honesty, that's what I wanted to hear, because I'm like, my GP gave me my estrogen judge. It's like, yeah, that's fine, off you go, enjoy, we'll see you in the new year. I'm like, I have no idea what this is doing for me. I don't know what it's going to do to me. So I'm just like, I don't know. But hearing you talk about it is really encouraging, to think that we need to just double down a little bit of effort into nutrition, into purposeful exercise, nurturing our liver and our kidney. And this is something that this is my big takeaway from today, that I'm going to go and research.
Yes, definitely. And nurturing the body as a whole, and finding, and I think realizing that, sometimes it's just okay not to be okay. That doesn't mean, if you need help, you should take it. If you're debilitated, you should. But there is so much more that is, as I've said, lying under why you are with the menopause you have. And it's sometimes addressing those things can make a big shift. And I talk to a lot of functional and integrative medicine, and what we're more than learning is the power of this whole new movement that's happening. Yesterday I talked to somebody who's working with women's pelvic floors, and she's a yoga teacher. She's also a physical therapist, and she has completely moved into using yogic approaches to work with women's prolapses. I mean, it was absolutely phenomenal. She said, I have non-invasive ultrasound methods. I use voice, singing, working with breath. And she said, and changing diet. And she said, women aren't needing to be squeezing Kegels every 5 minutes. Like she said, in fact, I hate those. She said, I don't let women do those sorts of exercises. Right. And we work completely differently on an integrative methods and trauma not informed, not invasive methods. And she said, women can walk away from here after 6 weeks and not have issues.
How extraordinary.
Yeah. I mean, and she's a qualified medical person, but she's just embraced the yogic side as well.
Oh, the power of taking control of our energy is so huge. And what's really another thing that's kind of sort of lit up a bulb for me as you were speaking was this idea of taking control and beginning to understand the impact of our life thus far on us. All the traumas, all the experiences, all the joy, all the sadness, everything that we've experienced in our lives so far will, of course, I mean, it had never really occurred to me before to think that, which is stupid, because I know how important our past lives, but that would affect what kind of menopause that you experience.
Definitely.
It's fascinating, and I talked to my sister. Yes, she's 5 years ahead of me, and the last 5 years for her have been hard. So she keeps going to me, you just wait. And I'm like, oh, shut up, I don't want to know. But we, despite the fact that we're sisters and we're genetically as similar as people can be by being twins, our life experiences have been hugely different. She used to travel all over the world for her work. She worked in a really high stress, very male dominated industry, and you know, has been through a lot more than me, who's basically just sat around being a yoga teacher for the last 20 years. So I think energetically wise, you know, our experiences have been super different and will inform our body's response to this shift in hormone hugely differently. So that's why I'm beginning to think that, you know, the work that I do, but teaching the chakras, which, you know, helps you unpeel the layers like a big onion of who you are and what got you to where you are now, is even more important and super valuable at this time of life.
Yeah, I definitely think that when you combine lifestyle with energetic work and extra support from a functional perspective, often they're focused on supplements and certain medications and really looking into where you are, right down to your DNA sometimes. We are entering new ways of managing menopause that are going to make, I will look back in 10 years' time and think, gosh, shoving every woman onto a hormone therapy was really quite a crude tool.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're probably, well, not probably, I think you're certainly very right in that. And you know, I mean, I guess people have been on HRT. I'm just thinking of my aunt who decided to come off her HRT at about the age of 85. And you think, oh my good Lord.
Wow.
Like, wow. Yeah, I mean, she had, yeah, it wasn't great results for her, but anyway.
No.
Yeah, but that was very crude. I mean, it changed her life. She was like, yeah, I can survive and there's no way I'm coming off it ever. And yeah, she had to come to shove before she did, to be fair. But
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm really optimistic and hopeful that this more holistic approach around it is good, because even like the sort of the noise around menopause at the moment is still, you know, use HRT, it's great, it'll help you for a bit and we're all in it together. But I don't hear anybody shouting from the rooftops your message, which I think is so much more valuable.
And I think that's more what I'm seeing coming through in the US and in Australia. That there is, you know, no, and they're definitely saying, well, there are many ways to do this, and I think that's very positive.
Yeah, no, it is. So Clarissa, listen, where can people find you? I know you've got a podcast, and so I will put all of this in the show notes, but if you just tell me quickly where you are and what your podcast is and all of that.
My podcast is called Thriving Through Menopause, and I have beautiful guests every week who talk about all sorts of holistic aspects around menopause. And I am on Instagram. You'll find me there a lot. I'm Thriving Through Menopause on Instagram, so you can find me there.
Find you there, definitely.
You'll find me there. And also you can go to my website, but it's going to go through a bit of a revamp because we're upgrading some of the work I do, because I'm going to integrate more Qigong into that now. But that's my name, ClarissaKritsjansson.com.
Okay,
so
wonderful. Perfect. Well, I'll put all of that in the show notes, and I really hope that this has sort of given some new ways of thinking to some people who've been listening. And if you're not at menopause age yet, then it's good to know this in advance, because like mindset, like expectation is always half the battle.
Absolutely. Mindset matters, and have a mind over menopause.
Yeah. Well, listen, Clarissa, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really enlightening, really interesting, and just gorgeous to meet you. So thank you.
Thank you, Roseanne. Thank you so much.